She walked into that bar in Oceanside like she had somewhere better to be. Quiet, measured, the kind of woman who took up exactly as much space as she needed and not an inch more. Nobody at the pool table looked up. Nobody at the bar moved their stool, and that was exactly how Captain Mara Devlin preferred it. It was a Friday in late October, the kind of night where the marine layer rolled in off the Pacific and the streetlights turned the fog orange, 3 deployments behind her, a 4th pending, and for the first time in months, she was off the clock. She ordered a club soda with lime, slid into the corner booth, and let herself breathe. That was when Sergeant First Class Danny Kowalski spotted her. Danny was a big man with a louder laugh, Fort Bragg originally, Special Forces. He was in Oceanside for a training exchange and had already had 2 beers and a confidence problem. He leaned over to his buddy Corporal Tate and said, just loud enough, "What's an officer doing in a place like this without her babysitters?" Tate laughed. Mara heard it. She always heard things. She did not look up from her drink. Danny walked over, not with malice, really, Maury with the kind of casual arrogance that sometimes grows in men who have never had their assumptions corrected hard enough. He put one hand on the table edge and grinned. "You look a little lost, Captain. What's your call sign? Something pretty, I bet." The table went quiet. A few Marines nearby stopped pretending not to listen. Mara set down her glass. She looked at Danny the way a math teacher looks at a student who just wrote the wrong answer with complete confidence. Patient, certain, a little tired. She said 2 words. "Reaper 10. The silence that followed was not the silence of a room that had gone cold. It was the silence of a room that had just understood something. Corporal Tate stood up first, not because anyone told him to. He stood up because he recognized the call sign before Danny did, and his body responded before his brain finished processing. Then another Marine near the bar stood, then 2 more at the pool table. Then the bartender, who had done 2 tours with the 1st Marine Division, set down the glass he was cleaning and stood without a word. Danny Kowalski looked around the room. He looked at Mara. He looked at the men standing. He started. "I don't know that name." One of the standing Marines, a staff sergeant named Robles, spoke carefully. 3 years ago, Sergeant, Helmand Province, a 4-vehicle convoy got pinned in a wadi by coordinated fire from 2 elevated positions. They had no ground support. They were taking casualties. The only close air support that responded through a communication blackout in weather that grounded everything else was a single FA-18 that made 4 gun runs in 12 minutes under fire. He paused. The pilot's call sign was Reaper 10. Danny did not say anything. Mara had not moved. Her expression had not changed. She was not performing anything. She was just sitting there the way she always sat, with all that weight behind her eyes, the kind of weight that only comes from having made decisions that could not be unmade. 14 men, Robles continued. She brought 14 men home that night. The room stayed standing. Danny Kowalski put his hand out, not confident anymore, not casual. He put it out the way a person does when they have just walked into a room much larger than the one they thought they were entering. "I owe you an apology, Captain." Mara looked at his hand for a moment, then she shook it. "You owe me a club soda," she said. "Mine's gone warm." Someone at the bar laughed. Then the room exhaled. Then everyone sat back down, and the Friday night resumed, and Mara went back to her quiet corner and her lime and her first peaceful breath in months. But something had shifted. Robles stopped by her table before he left. He was not the type for long speeches. He just set a folded piece of paper on the table in front of her. She opened it after he was gone. It was a photograph. 14 men in desert gear, squinting against a bright Afghan sun, their arms around each other. On the back, in different handwriting styles because they had each added their own, were 14 names and 1 shared line. "We didn't know your name. We didn't forget your wings." Mara sat with that photograph for a long time, long after the bar thinned out, long after the fog thickened outside, long after Danny Kowalski slipped out with his buddy Tate, both of them quieter than they had come in. She was not a sentimental woman. She had trained herself out of it somewhere over the Atlantic on her first deployment, traded it in for clarity and composure and the ability to make good decisions under pressure. But there in that corner booth, with a warm club soda and 14 handwritten names, something she had packed away a long time ago came quietly back. She remembered that night in Helmand, the weather, the static on the comms, the way her aircraft shuddered through the second gun run, and she had talked herself through each checklist item out loud, alone at altitude, while the ground below her burned. She had not known if they survived. She had filed her report. She had flown 2 more missions that week. She had never heard a word. She had always told herself it probably worked out. Now she knew. There is something we do not talk about enough when we talk about service. We talk about sacrifice. We talk about courage. We talk about the men and women who run toward danger. But we do not always talk about the silence that follows, the not knowing, the missions that end in paperwork and departure and years of wondering whether the thing you did at the edge of your ability, in the worst conditions, in the dark, actually mattered. It mattered. That is what 14 men in a photograph wanted her to know. It mattered, and they had not forgotten, even when they did not know her name. Mara Devlin walked out of that bar a little after midnight. The fog was thick, and the streets were quiet, and she had a flight brief at 6 in the morning. She tucked the photograph inside her jacket, close to her chest, and she walked back to her life. But she walked differently. There are people in this world who do the thing that needs doing in the dark, with no applause, no acknowledgement, no confirmation that it worked. They do it because it is right. They do it because someone has to, and they carry the silence of it home, and they learn to live inside that silence because the alternative is to stop doing the thing that needs doing. If you are one of those people, hear this. Somewhere, in some moment you may have already forgotten, you made a difference that someone else has not forgotten. You brought someone home. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment below with the word REAPER and let us know why. Subscribe to Soul Relief Stories for more narratives like this one. Share it with someone who deserves to be reminded that their quiet work matters. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself out there.